Welcome to Pennsylvania in Focus. I'm Aliana Kernodle. Pennsylvania election workers flagged 2,500 voter registrations dropped off last week in Lancaster County for suspected fraud. Joining me with more on this story is the Center Square's Pennsylvania editor, Kristen Smith. Kristen, what's happening in Lancaster County?
Lancaster County commissioners announced on Friday of last week that they received two really large batches of voter registration forms. And this is running up right until the deadline to register to vote in Pennsylvania. And so they get large batches. This, they said, is likely from a canvassing operation that goes as far back as June. However, election workers were going through these voter registration forms as they always do as part of their traditional process to verify that everything is on the up and up. Well, this time they found that everything was not on the up and up. Workers apparently noticed that there was a lot of applications filled out in the same handwriting. And then you had instances of voters' information that was all correct, but it wasn't their signature. And so when they would call, and they would find out their signatures by checking voter rolls. That's how they would figure this out. So then they would call the voter and talk to them. And that voter would say, no, I didn't fill that out. That's not me. Then the opposite was happening. There would be a voter's name with all this incorrect identifying information. And again, with a fake signature. And then again, they would call that voter and that voter would say, that's not me, that I'm not connected with that ballot. So there's several different ways that this was detected. This came out, on Friday, and it appears to be the first confirmed investigation into voter registration fraud. There have been other counties that have been mentioned in this, but the DA there in Lancaster County didn't want to name them specifically. There's been reports that Luzerne and York County are some of the ones that are affected, and these are all central PA. So it's unclear that the canvassing operation that has been suspected of being involved in this, they have not been named either. And it's important to clarify that there's 2,500 votes that are under review. Some of them have been deemed legitimate. But there are a significant number, 60% of the ones reviewed so far, that have been deemed fraudulent. This is, like I said, it's really, truly the first confirmed documented instance in this election of true voter fraud. What is important here, too, is that although the district attorney said this would be step one in a fraudulent voting process, step two would be obviously using these mail-in ballots to cast a fraudulent vote. And because some of the ballots, too, it was just, it wasn't like it was all Republicans or all Democrats or all a specific party. There would be such minor changes as a different address. So it begs the question, what were they using these fraudulent registrations for? The district attorney doesn't have any thoughts on that other than they've been stopped, and therefore step two of the process, as in casting a fake vote, is not going to happen.
This isn't the only instance where people are raising election concerns. What else has happened in the state?
In the last week or so, there's just been a lot of issues that are cropping up that are getting repeated on social media. And so in order of acknowledgement by county officials and of what's going on, we'll start up in Erie County, which is very much in the northwestern corner of the state, as far north as you can go in Pennsylvania, really. Their election board officials are saying that there's up to 20,000 ballots that have been affected by errors, such as some voters are getting duplicate ballots. Others are saying their mail-in ballots never arrived. The Postal Service can't account for thousands of ballots. There's just a real headache up there as far as getting people the votes that they have requested. The deadline to request a mail-in ballot in Pennsylvania was on October 29th, which was this past Tuesday. And so after that point, you cannot get one. You can't have one mailed to you. There's also the process that people can go into the office and vote on, or they can request the ballot and then fill it out right there and hand it to election workers. That's something that's been happening a lot in Pennsylvania, and we'll get to that in a minute. But in Erie, the voters weren't even getting that far, so they've been given through Sunday to come to the election office and basically get a new ballot in order to cast their vote there. Typically, the way a mail-in ballot process works in Pennsylvania is you receive it in the mail, you fill it in, and then you mail it back, or you put it in a ballot box. So this is going to require residents truly to probably follow the process of just handing their ballot right over once it's completed, because ballots have to be received by 8 p.m. on election day. So I wouldn't expect that voters would want to take the chance of getting it on Sunday and then hoping that it'll get there by Tuesday. And then going down the list regarding mail-in ballots, out in Bucks County, the Trump campaign actually sued Bucks County election workers or the election board because they allege that voters are being disenfranchised there. So on Tuesday, the final day to request the mail-in ballots, people were lined up around the corner waiting to do that very process where they would request it on demand, fill it out, and hand it right back. That really slows down the entire process. Election workers were saying it was taking up to 10 minutes per person. So you can imagine how that would really back up. And Bucks County is in southeastern Pennsylvania. It's a very purple county. It's suburban Philadelphia. There's a large population there, a large turnout there in every election, but specifically this one, since we're seeing record turnout all over the place. And so there was Republican voters specifically saying that county workers were coming out and telling them to get out of line around 2:30 in the afternoon, even though they needed to get in there before 5 p.m. There was a report that police were blocking the entrance. County workers are saying that this is not true, that if you were in line by 5 p.m., you were given your mail-in ballot. You just weren't allowed to stand there and fill it out in person and then hand it to them. You had to go out and then mail it back in or drop it off in a ballot box as you're traditionally supposed to do. Then there is supposedly a bomb threat against the Republican the Republican campaign headquarters in Montgomery County, which is also southeastern Philadelphia. There's been a lot of smaller reports about voter intimidation or disenfranchisement in that way that are less substantiated. So that's just some of the problems that have happened over the last week. And it's expected that as we get closer to Election Day, these issues might ramp up. It seems like the State Department is trying really hard to keep people confident, to keep people feeling like elections are safe. They're coming out every day through up until Election Day to basically give a prepared statement that in some cases responds to these news events, but also just gives more information about how voters can get their mail-in ballots, how they can vote on Election Day, all those kind of things. So, the tension is ratcheting up in Pennsylvania, and by our next recording, we will know what kind of impact this had, if at all.
Well, Kristen, thank you for your insights on this story. I know Pennsylvania is not the only one seeing these sorts of issues. There's reports of other states that are facing reports of everything from voter intimidation allegations in Wisconsin to a ballot box being set on fire in Washington state. Listeners can keep up with these stories and more at thecentersquare.com.